Hi, my name is Danielle, and I'm with the Fort Worth HR Association, and we are with Matthew Hirst, who we will be talking with today regarding the Career Search Series hosted by the Fort Worth HR Association.
Well, thank you, Danielle. It's great to be here.
We've got some questions for you today, Matt, but first, if you would please, I've got your title page up here. You are the Adjunct Assistant Professor with the University of Texas at Arlington, and if you'd like to say a couple of words before we get started.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, thank you, Danielle. I appreciate your interest. And so I have spent number of years building capability, culture, and results as a senior HR and OD leader over the years, and more recently started to teach at UT Arlington, where I teach organizational behavior to undergraduate students and HR strategy to graduate students. So it's an opportunity for me to serve the next generation of leaders that will be entering the workforce soon.
We are very happy to have you here with us today. So let's get started.
Thank you.
My first question is, how have internships changed during COVID?
Well, I think they've changed, Danielle, in a couple of ways. First of all, they're more scarce. Fewer organizations are offering internships. Certainly, the paid internships have become very scarce. And then the unpaid internships certainly have become more rare during COVID. And I think it's made it much more difficult for students to find those internships and to apply for them. Applying for them is also very difficult because right now so many organizations, Danielle, are focused on trying to get their regular employees back to work safely. In some cases, that means on campus or on site. They've been navigating the complexities of trying to work remotely. And for a lot of organizations, it's a brand new paradigm for them. And so most organizational leaders, Danielle, right now are so severely distracted that internships are not a high priority for them. It's one of those nice to haves, although you and I know how critical it is to cultivating the next generation of leaders. I think a lot of organizational leaders are trying to figure out how to sort through all the COVID stuff first before they can get to the internships. And then secondly, it's made it a lot harder for applicants because student interns typically want to know a lot about the culture and the fit of an organization before they apply for an internship. Because ideally you want an internship to be a valuable learning experience for the student. And that is much more difficult to do right now remotely because you can't have the in-person conversations. You're not on site in the building to kind of get the vibe of what's going on in the organization. So it's a lot harder for students to figure out if an internship is going to be a valuable experience for them.
Not to mention learning the difficulties of Zoom meetings and just the in general talking by video instead of the in-person camaraderie that we've all grown to appreciate.
Amen to that.
Absolutely. Let's see. What is your biggest concern facing students right now, and what advice would you give them regarding this concern?
I think it's to remain hopeful. Students work really hard to complete their degrees. And I have some students right now that are trying to complete sometimes 3 and 4 summer courses at the same time. And many of those summer courses are 5 weeks instead of the traditional 11 weeks. So they are really stressed about trying to get their coursework done and very frustrated from time to time. And they have been counting on internships to help them finish their degree. So there's a very high level of frustration for students, and I'm certainly concerned about that. The advice that I often give student interns and applicants is the same advice that I give people when I talk about emotional intelligence. Avoid catastrophizing. Avoid challenge and the setback is much larger and more threatening than it really is. Avoid personalizing it. It's not about you. There are fewer internships available. Many organizations are struggling just to keep up with COVID. So it's not really a shortcoming for you. It's not something that you're doing wrong. And the other advice that I often give people is don't memorialize the challenge. So this is not a lasting problem. COVID is going to go away. There are going to be more internships opening up. More organizations are figuring out how to assess talent virtually, and you are going to land an internship. So the advice that I often give students is just remain hopeful. This is going to happen. And then while you wait for it to happen, lean into your studies and lean into the work that will help you finish your degree successfully.
It is a scary time out there right now, but yes, hopefully we will see a light at the end of the tunnel soon and get back to what we all used to consider normal. That's helpful, giving that reassurance.
I couldn't agree more.
What are 2 tips you would give to a new or recent grad looking for their first professional job?
I think the best advice that I could offer recently graduated students is I think the problem that they face, Danielle, more frequently than not, is a lot of roles will require experience and X number of years of experience. And they get very frustrated when they look at those roles and think, well, I don't have that experience. How do I break through? My advice is that you do have that experience, but figure out how you're going to translate your academic experience into your professional and occupational experience. So when it says, say, 2 or 3 years of experience, I would say if you're an undergraduate student, you already have 4 years of experience. You've been a problem solver for at least 4 years. If you're a grad student, you probably tagged on another 2 years on top of that. And so now you have about 6 years of experience. Most organizations expect people in their organization to anticipate and solve problems for them. Students have been doing that through their entire academic life. And so I would encourage students to find good connections between how they have done that as a student to how they will do it as a new hire in the organization. And then the only other bit of advice that I would offer at this point briefly would be that really get to know the organization that you're applying to.
Yes.
A lot of applicants take a very generalized approach. Their cover letter says to whom it may concern. They know very little about the organization that they're applying for. The more that you can dig into what the organization's challenges are in the moment, the more that you will have the opportunity to connect those challenges with what you did in school. And almost, with the internet now, you can find out almost anything. Find out who the hiring manager is. Find out who you might be having a conversation with. And if you're sending a cover letter in with your resume, address it to that person personally. In your cover letter, talk about some of the problems that they might be facing. Congratulate them, for example, on their most recent quarterly earnings, if that's appropriate. Congratulate them on their most recent merger, if that's appropriate. It is very special for hiring leaders to know, and it's unusual, that hiring leaders see candidates that have done their homework, and students have done a lot of homework over the last couple of years, do their homework on the organization, figure out what the organization is about, think about what they can do to make the organization better, and then make that case for how they will add value to the organization.
That is most helpful. It goes both directions because an interview, it goes both ways. When one is interviewing, you would hope that the person that you are interviewing with will hire you, and the person interviewing you is hoping that they're going to find a good fit for their organization.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, well said, Danielle.
Very helpful. Well, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, and you've been most helpful, and I hope that this video is helpful in the Fort Worth HR Career Search Series that we are hosting, our very first one virtually. So Thank you so much, Matt, and I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All righty.